Welcome back to the channel, guys, and on this video we're going to look at doing something with scraped layers, and you'll see from the original thumbnail that I've stated that you do not need any embeds for this, and that's quite true. So here you have the 6 scrapers I've designed for this soap, and we've called it the Super Bat Soap, not wanting to get in any trouble. Now each of these layers is going to be poured individually, and I'm putting the right amount of lye into the batter to make up these small amounts of soap, which you then have to let get to the right consistency to be able to scrape. The important thing with a scraped layers soap is you must have patience. You must have patience. You need to wait for it to get to the right consistency, and you will be in the best position to getting these really nice crisp scraped layers. So let's let this soap here set up until it is ready to be scraped, which it should be about now. And what I tend to go and do is the shape that I'm aiming for, I go in and I just move some of the batter around, so I'm having to shift less of it with the scraper. So in our first one, you can see number 1 here is basically we are creating the legs. So the next bit will be the pants. So this scraper is going to take out the area for the super pants. And we're just going to scrape this across. Now you're going to do this a few times, and it does take a little while to get this technique right, but it's worth hanging in there with, and it's worth giving it a big go to. Now my scrapers here are made out of a 3mm acrylic that I've cut using a jewellery saw, but you can make these out of cardboard, and you're going to have to make them yourselves because you have to fit it to the moulds that you have. This mould here is from Custom Craft Tools, and I love it because it's clear and you can see exactly what's going on. And I thought I'd share that side view with you so you can see exactly what's happening as I'm scraping this soap away here. So I'm basically going backwards and forwards. I'm just making sure that any gaps that I see in that top layer, I'm scraping out. And I like to do this layer by layer, make sure that I've got enough soap in the layer, and also that I'm not rushing or racing, because what I want it to be is thin enough to fill in each layer and each gap I'm making with the scraper. And then I'm allowing that to set up before I then move on. One good trick that's always worth remembering is colouring all of the oil you need for one particular colour in your batch the same colour. So each time you pull off some of the oil that you've coloured to mix in with the lye, you know that it's going to be the same colour. And then clean up all the sides of your mould as you go. It just makes things a lot easier in the long run. And again, I'm going back in, cleaning up a little bit more there. Each time you go through, you're going to get a nicer shape. And as I say, the longer you leave this to set up, the better a shape and a better layer you're going to get. And each layer that you allow that to do for, you get a better layer, and therefore the design looks its best right at the end of it. To show you the process again, my next layer is going to be black, and this portion of oil has been coloured with my mica. And to that, I will weigh out the precise amount of lye solution. And for these small batches, I will use a frappe mixer to bring it to the required trace. There's a link in the description below to the kind of frappe mixer I use. Once this is poured, it's a waiting game. The batter needs to set up enough to hold its own weight. You want to think kind of royal icing or a wall plaster. Be patient at this point, and don't be tempted to try and scrape a layer too early. It won't hold its shape, and you want the next layer that you're going to pour over the top of this to not collapse that layer that you've just scraped. This scraper here is defining the bottom of the belt, so it's got very intricate pieces to it, and I want it to be at the right consistency, and I also want to take my time, and if I need to, I'm going to go back in with any batter into places within the mould that I think need to have more batter built up, so I can scrape it away and give myself the best possible layer scraping on this layer. The next layer is going to be the belt itself, and for this layer I used fluorescent yellow mica. In every video where I use fluorescent yellow, you must always disperse the mica before you add it to your soap batter, and you're going to get sick of me saying that, but I will. Now I honestly disperse all of my micas this way for any soap that I make. It's a really good practice to get into, and it'll allow you to break up clumps of mica that you see that are smearing on the glass, and there's streaks of unincorporated mica on the glass. What it also means is that you can hand stir your colours into your batters, and they're going to give you these beautifully rich colours without the need for stick blending. This takes a little bit of skill to learn initially, but by adding some light oil such as apricot kernel, avocado, olive, or even a little of your batch oils if you're worried about ratios and assessments and things like that, and then working the mica into a homogeneous colour with no streaks and no specks using a palette knife is how I found the best way to get your colorants stirrable into your batters. And as you can see here, I've got a lovely, smooth and totally mixed batter that's still fluid enough to fill all of the details in the belt. There's no streaks and there's no over blending. Scraper number 3 is the reverse of scraper 2, and it finishes off the top of the belt. It lines up the details and it's establishing the character that we're going for in this soap. We move on to the torso area of the character, and here is where we are creating the look of an embed without needing a complicated mould for the embed or without needing to use soap dough. So I've poured my grey layer and I've let it set up, and I'm using scraper 4 here, which defines the bottom of the logo on his chest. On this layer, the edges of the grey are not being scraped back all the way, and we're going to deal with those in the next section. Now we move on to the pour for the logo itself, and this layer needs to be fluid. We want it to fall naturally into the grooves that the scrapers have made, and ideally I don't want to bang this down. We're using lots of sharp points, and a lot of the scrapers have all of these sharp points going on, and when you bang the mould down, I found this either rounds out or softens or distorts the overall design we're going for. So what I want to do is I want to have this a nice fluid consistency, allow it to settle into the grooves I want it to settle into, and then give it time to set up. So the principle of all of this is pour more fluid and allow each layer to set up in its own time, and just enjoy the process. Try not to rush it. This is never going to be a 60-minute pour. This is going to take some time, but at the end of it, you're going to get something that's going to be worthwhile. So to begin with, I'm going to gently mound the soap up into the middle of the loaf. I poured the black soap fluid, and I did that in order to get it into all of the grooves and nooks and crannies of the scraping. However, the scraping for the next portion, as you can see, has got these up points, and I need to get it up so that I'm not working so hard at getting this away. Scraper 5 finishes the logo, and you'll see 2 green arrows here, and what they denote is the little trick behind this kind of embed scrape. And as long as these 2 sections are lower than the scraper beforehand, it'll scrape the grey colour back and leave the logo centred on the chest. Now here you'll see I've overlaid the previous scraper, and if you want to pause this, please do, but you'll see exactly how the logo is created and where the scrapers overlap in order to give us this illusion. And at this point, I've got enough black in the full length of the scraper. So I need to remove some of the excess black. And all I'm going to do is gently work down and get enough of this black out so that I'll eventually have 2 grey stripes down the side. And that'll mean that the logo is complete and centered in the chest of this design. And the penultimate pour of this design, with the grey colour once again, is poured fluid. We have little peaks and troughs in this logo, and in order for it to sit right into those, the batter needs to be poured fluid and just allowed to set up in its own time. So again, you need to make sure that you're not doing this in an hour. You need a few hours. You might want to do it over a couple of days and just enjoy the process of doing it rather than trying to rush these out. And I promise you, if you do it that way, you'll have fantastic results every single time. The 6th scraper is very simple and is essentially creating the cape shape at the shoulders. And again, I'm going to pull the batter up to mount up onto the top to rough out the scraper shape. And then when I go in with the scraper here, I waste less soap and I don't have as much work to do. But be careful at this point. You don't want to go too deep or you'll disturb the rest of your layers at this point. And after all this hard work, the last thing we want to do is mess up any of those layers underneath. And the very last layer here doesn't require scraping because it's going to top our soap off and it's just going to finish it off in black, again, poured nice and fluidly and very gently, just allow it to escape over the surface, fill in all the nooks and crannies. And then we're going to let this saponify overnight and come back tomorrow to cut it. Don't worry guys, it is not your eyes, it is actually the autofocus on the camera went a bit screwy at this point, so unfortunately I didn't get a nice crisp view of this one, but there is a nice picture at the end for you to see the result of this soap. And there we have the Super Bat soap. If you've enjoyed this video, please give it a like. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. It really helps me grow and allows me to make more videos and tutorials for all of you. When you subscribe, don't forget to click the bell icon to get notified when a new video is uploaded. Thanks a lot, Soapsters. See you again next time.